You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These words from Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic philosophers, carry a timeless truth. In a world that often celebrates self-promotion and ego above all else, how often do we stop to consider the strength that comes from humility? Not weakness, not self-doubt, but humility, the kind that anchors us, guides our actions, and helps us face life's challenges with grace and clarity. Today, we're going to explore why humility isn't just a virtue from ancient times, but a powerful tool for thriving in the modern world. And through the lens of Stoicism, we'll uncover practical ways to cultivate it in a way that feels meaningful and achievable. So, if you're ready to shift your focus inward and discover the strength that comes from mastering your own mind, let's dive in. What does humility mean to you? Is it about downplaying your strengths or acting modestly to avoid standing out? Or perhaps you see it as acknowledging your flaws while striving to improve? While these ideas might capture parts of humility, the Stoics had a slightly different take, one that's both profound and deeply practical. To the Stoics, humility wasn't about belittling yourself or ignoring your abilities. It was about striking a careful balance between self-respect and the honest acknowledgement of your limitations. It's recognizing your potential without letting pride cloud your judgment, and understanding where you have control and, just as importantly, where you do not. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, had a powerful way of driving this point home. He taught that we should focus solely on what is within our control, our own thoughts, actions, and attitudes. Everything else, external events, the opinions of others, even success or failure, is ultimately beyond our power to dictate. Take a moment to reflect on that. How often do we get swept up in worrying about things we can't change? Whether it's the fear of failure, the need for validation, or the endless comparisons we make to others, we often place our sense of worth on factors outside our control. According to Epictetus, this is where humility steps in. It's the ability to accept that while we cannot control the world around us, we have full authority over how we respond to it. Think of humility as a kind of internal compass. It grounds you by reminding you that life isn't about proving your superiority or tearing yourself down. It's about living with integrity and wisdom. For example, imagine you've achieved a significant milestone, like landing a prestigious job or receiving public recognition for your work. Without humility, pride might lead you to overestimate your abilities, making you believe your success is entirely your doing. But from a Stoic perspective, humility allows you to recognize that your hard work played a role, yes, but so did countless factors beyond your control: timing, opportunities, and the help of others. This mindset doesn't diminish your accomplishment. It makes you appreciate it more fully while keeping your ego in check. On the other hand, humility also protects us in moments of failure. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt or feeling paralyzed by criticism, a humble mindset rooted in Stoicism reminds us to focus on what we can do next. If we've made a mistake, humility empowers us to own it, learn from it, and move forward without clinging to the shame of imperfection. After all, as Epictetus might say, neither success nor failure defines your worth. What matters is how you choose to respond. So, how does this version of humility compare to the one you initially thought of? It's not about false modesty or lowering yourself to please others. Instead, it's a powerful tool for inner peace, clarity, and strength. By focusing on what's within our control and letting go of the rest, humility helps us navigate life with purpose and resilience. And as we continue, we'll explore how to develop this quality further, turning the lessons of Stoicism into actionable steps for our daily lives. Picture this: you've spent weeks preparing for an important presentation. You've put in the hours, rehearsed every line, and triple-checked your slides, but the day arrives and right as you're about to start, your technology fails. The slides won't load, your microphone cuts out, and suddenly that carefully prepared plan feels like it's unraveling. Frustration builds, maybe even panic. You start questioning yourself, why didn't I prepare for this? What will everyone think? Moments like these are universal. We've all experienced that sinking feeling when the outcome we worked so hard for starts slipping through our fingers. But here's the thing, no matter how much effort we put in, some things are simply outside of our control, and the Stoics understood this better than anyone. They believed that a key to living a fulfilled life is recognizing the difference between what lies within our power and what does not. It's a lesson rooted in humility, and one that can liberate us from unnecessary stress and disappointment. Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Let that sink in for a moment. He's not dismissing the challenges we face or saying they don't affect us. He's reminding us that the real power lies in our response. This is where humility comes into play. It takes humility to admit that no amount of preparation or skill can guarantee a perfect outcome. It takes humility to recognize that there are forces at work, technology glitches, other people's actions, or even random chance that we simply cannot control. Now, this doesn't mean we stop putting in effort or resign ourselves to fate. Far from it. The Stoics were deeply committed to taking action and doing their best. But they were also realistic. They knew that attaching our sense of peace or satisfaction to outcomes we can't dictate only leads to frustration. Instead, they urged us to focus on what we can control: our thoughts, our efforts, and our attitude. Let's go back to the presentation scenario. While you couldn't control the technical issues, you could control your reaction. You might take a deep breath, use humor to lighten the mood, or adapt by presenting without slides. By shifting your focus to what's within your power, your professionalism, your composure, you regain control of the moment, even in the face of chaos. What you've done, in essence, is demonstrate humility. You've accepted the limits of what you can control, chosen not to waste energy fighting against reality, and instead directed your efforts where they actually matter. This principle applies to so many areas of life. Think about relationships. You can't control how others behave, no matter how much you care about them or how hard you try. But you can control how you communicate, how you set boundaries, and how you respond to their actions. Or consider your career. You can't guarantee a promotion or prevent a company-wide layoff, but you can control how diligently you work, how you build your skills, and how you adapt to challenges. And here's the beauty of this Stoic mindset. By letting go of the need to control everything, you actually free yourself. You're no longer weighed down by outcomes you can't predict or frustrations you can't change. Instead, your energy is directed toward what truly matters, your efforts and your character. This leads to a deeper sense of calm and a resilience that helps you face life's uncertainties with grace. So, the next time you find yourself caught in a moment of frustration, ask yourself, is this something I can control, or is it something I need to let go of? It's a simple question, but one that can profoundly shift your perspective. And in doing so, you'll not only cultivate humility, but you'll also discover a surprising strength in accepting life's unpredictability. As we move forward, let's explore how this principle intertwines with the idea of living with purpose and authenticity, a cornerstone of Stoic wisdom. Does your ego prevent you from seeing things as they truly are? It's a powerful question, and one the Stoics would have asked often because for them, the ego wasn't just a minor stumbling block. It was a major obstacle on the path to wisdom and inner peace. The Stoics recognized that arrogance and an inflated sense of self could blind us to reality, distort our actions, and prevent genuine growth. In fact, Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, warned that pride often leads us to overestimate our knowledge and abilities while ignoring our flaws and limitations. He wrote, "You must lay aside the belief that you already know everything. Pride is the greatest barrier to the pursuit of wisdom. At its core, the ego thrives on illusions, the illusion of superiority, the illusion of control, and the illusion that we're somehow invulnerable to error or criticism. But when we cling to these illusions, we create blind spots. We become less receptive to feedback, less willing to admit when we're wrong, and more likely to make decisions based on what protects our pride rather than what is actually right or wise." Let's look at a simple example. Imagine you're leading a team at work and someone points out a flaw in your plan. If your ego is running the show, you might dismiss their input without consideration, thinking, "What do they know? I've been doing this for years." But what happens then? Perhaps the flaw they spotted goes unaddressed, and later down the line, the plan falls apart, causing unnecessary stress or failure. All because ego prevented you from pausing, listening, and considering the possibility that someone else had a valuable perspective. In contrast, humility might have led you to see that critique, not as an attack, but as an opportunity to improve. Unchecked ego doesn't just create professional roadblocks, it can also harm our personal relationships. Think about how many arguments escalate, not because of the issue itself, but because one or both parties refuse to back down. Maybe it's a disagreement with a friend where admitting you misunderstood something feels too much like defeat. Or maybe it's a pride-driven need to always have the last word. These behaviors, driven by ego and arrogance, chip away at trust and connection. You might win the argument, but at what cost? The Stoics believed that recognizing our own ignorance is one of the most liberating acts of humility. Why? Because it opens the door to learning and self-improvement. When you admit to yourself, "I don't have all the answers," or "I may be wrong," you create space to grow. Seneca emphasized that only by shedding the false confidence of ego can we start to see things clearly, ourselves, others, and the world around us. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Has there been a time when ego held you back? Maybe it stopped you from asking for help because you didn't want to appear weak, or it caused you to stubbornly stick to a decision you knew deep down wasn't the best. How might those situations have turned out differently if humility had been the guiding force instead? The truth is, ego isn't inherently bad, it's part of being human. But the danger arises when we let it dominate our thoughts and actions, when it overshadows our ability to be honest with ourselves and others. The Stoics teach us that humility isn't about weakness or self-deprecation. It's about seeing reality as it is, not as our ego wants it to be. And when we embrace that mindset, we set ourselves up for clearer judgment, stronger relationships, and a more meaningful life. Next, we'll explore practical ways to identify and manage our ego in day-to-day situations, turning Stoic wisdom into actionable habits. For now, think about where humility could create more space for understanding in your own life. How might you approach challenges differently if you quieted the voice of ego and allowed humility to take the lead? Think about something as simple as brushing your teeth. It's a routine most of us do every day without much thought. But have you ever stopped to notice how automatic it feels? How often do you reflect on whether you're rushing through it, distracted by your phone, or lost in thoughts about the day ahead? This small, ordinary act highlights something bigger, how little we often notice about our own habits and actions, and that's where self-awareness, the foundation of humility in Stoic philosophy, comes in. The Stoics believed that self-awareness is the starting point for living a virtuous and grounded life. Without it, we're like a ship drifting aimlessly, unaware of where the currents are taking us. To practice humility, we first need to understand ourselves, our patterns, our reactions, and the ways we might unknowingly let ego or external events shape our choices. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and a devoted Stoic, offers a practical example of this. Despite the weight of leading an empire, he took the time to reflect daily through journaling. His meditations, written not for an audience but for his own growth, reveal a constant effort to examine his thoughts, actions, and values. He would ask himself questions like, am I living in alignment with virtue? Am I being swayed by anger or pride? Am I focusing on what truly matters? This habit of reflection wasn't just philosophical, it was deeply practical. Journaling helped Marcus Aurelius cultivate self-awareness and keep his ego in check. It allowed him to recognize his mistakes, reassess his priorities, and approach challenges with humility. And the beauty of this practice is that it's something we can all do, no matter our circumstances. So, how can you incorporate this idea into your own life? You don't need to fill pages with eloquent prose or dedicate hours to writing. Start small. At the end of each day, take 5 to 10 minutes to reflect. Ask yourself questions like, did I act out of pride today? Was there a moment when I could have listened more or judged less? Did I focus on what I could control, or did I waste energy worrying about things beyond my power? The key is to be honest with yourself. This isn't about self-criticism, but about self-discovery. Over time, this simple practice can reveal patterns in your behavior, helping you identify areas where you can improve and reminding you to stay grounded in humility. Let's consider a real-life example. Imagine you had a difficult conversation with a colleague or friend earlier in the day. During your reflection, you might realize that you interrupted them without truly listening or dismissed their perspective because you felt you were right. By acknowledging this in your journal, you give yourself a chance to course correct. You could decide to approach them the next day, apologize if necessary, and make a conscious effort to listen more fully in the future. This kind of self-awareness helps break the cycle of ego-driven reactions and replaces it with mindful, intentional actions. Even if journaling isn't your preferred method, the principle remains the same. Find a way to pause and reflect. It could be during your evening walk, a quiet moment before bed, or even as part of a conversation with a trusted friend or partner. What matters is carving out space to examine your thoughts and actions with humility and curiosity. This practice not only deepens self-awareness but also strengthens your ability to respond to life's challenges with grace and authenticity. It helps you notice when pride sneaks in, when you're clinging to control, or when you're acting against your own values. And with that awareness, you can begin to adjust little by little, aligning your everyday actions with the virtues the Stoics held dear. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you seek truth, you will not seek to win every argument. If you seek truth, you will not value outward appearances. By seeking the truth about ourselves through reflective practices like journaling, we take a crucial step toward both humility and freedom. And in doing so, we create a life that feels not only more grounded but also more meaningful. Now that we've explored the power of self-awareness, let's move on to how humility fosters stronger relationships and connections with others, another vital aspect of Stoic living. When was the last time you truly listened to someone, not just hearing their words, but fully paying attention without planning your response, interrupting, or letting your mind wander? It's a humbling question, isn't it? In a world where conversations often feel like competitions, where we're conditioned to react faster, talk louder, and prove our point, the simple act of listening has become something of a lost art. But for the Stoics, listening wasn't just polite. It was a powerful act of humility and a vital tool for personal growth. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most enduring voices, famously said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This might sound like common sense, but how often do we actually live by this principle? For Epictetus, listening wasn't just about gaining knowledge. It was about grounding ourselves in the understanding that every person, no matter their status or experience, has something to teach us. He believed that wisdom often comes from unexpected places, but only if we're humble enough to set aside our ego and truly pay attention. Let's explore what this looks like in practice. Imagine you're in a discussion with a colleague who disagrees with you about how to approach a project. Instead of focusing on defending your position or mentally crafting your rebuttal while they speak, consider what happens when you pause, quiet your own thoughts, and genuinely listen. You might notice a perspective you hadn't considered, a valuable insight that strengthens the project as a whole. Or at the very least, you demonstrate respect for their point of view, which builds trust and opens the door for collaboration. Listening in this way doesn't mean you have to agree, but it does mean you approach the interaction with humility, recognizing that you don't hold a monopoly on good ideas. On the flip side, think about how many misunderstandings are rooted in the failure to listen. How often do conflicts escalate because one or both sides are more interested in being heard than in hearing the other person? A simple conversation can spiral into an argument when pride takes over and neither party is willing to step back and ask, "What is this person really trying to tell me?" Practicing the virtue of listening isn't just a way to avoid unnecessary conflict, it's a way to connect more deeply, to understand others on a level that fosters empathy and reduces arrogance. Take personal relationships as another example. Perhaps a loved one is sharing something difficult they're experiencing. How often do we rush to offer solutions or advice, believing we need to fix things? While our intentions may be good, we sometimes forget that what people need most in these moments isn't a solution, it's to feel understood. By simply listening without judgment or interruption, we affirm their experience and create a space where they feel valued. That's humility in action, choosing to focus on someone else's needs rather than letting our own desire to control or solve the situation take over. And here's the unexpected truth: listening benefits us just as much as it benefits others. It keeps our ego in check by reminding us that we don't know everything. It teaches us patience and helps us resist the urge to dominate conversations or assume we're always right. Most importantly, it shows us that every interaction is an opportunity to learn, whether from a friend, a stranger, or even someone we disagree with. If you want to start practicing this virtue, the next time you're in a conversation, try this. Resist the urge to formulate a response while the other person is speaking. Instead, focus entirely on their words, their tone, and their meaning. Reflect on what they said before you respond, and if needed, ask clarifying questions to show you're genuinely trying to understand. Approach the conversation with the mindset of a student, not an expert. It's a small shift, but one that can profoundly change the quality of your interactions. As we wrap up this section, ask yourself, how often do I listen to hear rather than listen to reply? How many opportunities to learn or connect might I have missed because I was too focused on my own voice? By embracing the Stoic principle of listening, we not only honor others' perspectives, but also take an essential step toward humility, reminding ourselves that every person has something to teach us if we're willing to listen. From here, let's turn our attention to how these daily acts of humility can culminate in living a life guided by virtue and purpose, the true aim of Stoic practice. Imagine this: you've been working toward a big goal. Maybe it's launching a project, mastering a new skill, or even building a stronger relationship. You've poured in your time, your energy, and your heart, only to see things fall apart. The project is rejected, the skill feels out of reach, or the relationship takes an unexpected turn. That sinking feeling of failure starts to creep in. Sound familiar? We've all been there, caught in that raw moment where disappointment feels overwhelming, and our first instinct might be to blame ourselves, blame others, or simply give up. But what if we approached failure differently? What if, instead of letting setbacks define us, we could transform them into opportunities for growth? This is exactly what the Stoics teach us. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, famously said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." At first glance, that might sound a little puzzling. How can an obstacle, something that seems to block our progress, actually become the path forward? Marcus understood that setbacks are inevitable. None of us can escape them, but what truly matters isn't the obstacle itself, it's how we choose to respond. And for the Stoics, every failure, every obstacle, every disappointment is a chance to practice resilience, wisdom, and most importantly, humility. Let's break this down. When we fail, our ego often takes the biggest hit. It whispers things like, "You're not good enough," or "You should have known better." But the Stoics remind us that failure isn't a reflection of our worth, it's simply a part of life. More than that, it's a teacher. Each setback presents us with an opportunity to learn something vital about ourselves. Maybe it highlights an area where we can improve. Maybe it humbles us, reminding us that perfection is an illusion and that growth is a process. Or maybe it teaches us patience, showing us that success often requires persistence and adaptability. Think about it this way: when you were learning to ride a bike, how many times did you fall before you found your balance? Those falls weren't failures, they were part of the process. Without them, you wouldn't have learned how to adjust, how to steady yourself, or how to try again. The same principle applies to every area of life. Each setback, no matter how painful in the moment, is an opportunity to reflect, recalibrate, and ultimately grow stronger. The Stoics went even further by embracing setbacks as necessary for building character. They saw challenges not as things to avoid, but as tools for shaping themselves into better people. Seneca, for example, believed that adversity was essential for cultivating virtues like courage, patience, and humility. He wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." For him, the trials we face are like weights in a gym. They might feel heavy and uncomfortable, but they're what make us stronger in the long run. To connect this back to humility, consider what happens when you genuinely embrace a setback as a lesson. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance or dwelling on self-pity, you shift your mindset. You acknowledge that you don't have all the answers, that you're still learning, and that it's okay to stumble along the way. This isn't about lowering your self-esteem. It's about adopting a realistic, grounded perspective, one where you recognize your imperfections without letting them define you. That's humility. It's the ability to look at failure and say, "This didn't go as planned, but what can I learn from it? How can I do better next time?" Let's bring this idea to life with a relatable example. Imagine you're preparing for an important job interview, one you feel confident about, only to leave the room realizing you stumbled over key questions. You don't get the job. In that moment, it's easy to feel defeated or even embarrassed. But what if you reframed the experience? Instead of labeling it as a failure, you could see it as a practice run, an opportunity to pinpoint areas where you need more preparation or clarity. Maybe it teaches you to research the company more thoroughly or to practice answering certain types of questions. By doing so, the setback becomes a stepping stone, not a dead end. This reframing takes practice. It's not always easy to see the lesson when you're in the middle of disappointment, but with time and effort, it becomes second nature. And the more you approach life with this mindset, the more resilient and humble you become. You start to see failures not as evidence of inadequacy, but as necessary milestones on the journey to becoming your best self. So the next time life throws an obstacle in your path, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is this teaching me? How can this moment make me stronger? By reframing setbacks in this way, you'll not only grow in wisdom and character, but you'll also cultivate the kind of humility that allows you to face life's challenges with grace. As the Stoics show us, the obstacle truly can become the way, and in embracing this, you'll find that failure doesn't diminish you, it elevates you. Take a moment right now and think of 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big or grand. Maybe it's as simple as the morning coffee that helped you start your day, the support of a friend or family member, or even the fact that you woke up today with the opportunity to try again. Go ahead, name them in your mind. Now reflect on how that made you feel, even in just a few seconds. Gratitude has a remarkable way of shifting our focus. It pulls us out of the constant hustle for more success, more recognition, more possessions, and gently reminds us of what we already have, and in turn, it nurtures humility. The Stoics, especially Seneca, emphasized the transformative power of gratitude. For Seneca, gratitude wasn't just about saying thank you or acknowledging the good things in life. It was about cultivating a mindset that recognizes and appreciates the temporary and unpredictable nature of everything we hold dear. He believed that gratitude keeps us grounded by reducing the sense of entitlement that so easily creeps into modern life. When we take time to reflect on what we're thankful for, we begin to see how much of what we have is not completely within our control, but is instead a combination of effort, external circumstances, and often the kindness or contributions of others. This perspective naturally fosters humility, reminding us that we are not self-made islands, but deeply interconnected with the world around us. Let's explore this idea further. Imagine someone who has achieved significant financial success or recognition in their career. Without gratitude, this success can sometimes lead to arrogance. They might think, "I did this all on my own," or "I deserve this because I'm better than others." This mindset can create a sense of entitlement, where they not only expect their success to continue, but also fail to recognize the factors beyond their control: support from others, opportunities they were fortunate to receive, or even simple luck. Without gratitude, success often becomes a breeding ground for pride, and pride can blind us to the reality of our limitations and the impermanence of what we've achieved. Now let's flip that scenario. Imagine the same person, but this time they approach their success with gratitude. Instead of focusing solely on their own efforts, they take time to acknowledge those who helped them along the way, the mentors who guided them, the team members who collaborated with them, or even the circumstances that aligned in their favor. This doesn't diminish their hard work or talent, but it places their achievements into a broader and more accurate perspective. With gratitude, they're less likely to fall into the trap of arrogance and more likely to remain humble, grounded, and aware of how much they still have to learn and grow. Gratitude, in essence, acts as a counterbalance to entitlement. It shifts the focus from "what do I deserve" to "what have I been given." This doesn't just apply to wealth or career success. Even in our daily lives, practicing gratitude can reframe how we see the world and our place in it. For example, when you're stuck in traffic, it's easy to let frustration take over. But a moment of gratitude for the car you're driving, the job you're heading to, or even the song playing on the radio can transform the experience. Gratitude reminds us that our frustrations are often rooted in expectations that reality doesn't owe us. It humbles us by shifting our perspective from what we lack to what we've been fortunate enough to have. So, how do we put this into practice? One simple habit is to carve out a few minutes each day to reflect on what you're grateful for. Write it down, speak it out loud, or just think about it as part of your morning or evening routine. Start small, just 2 or 3 things each day. You'll find that over time, this practice not only nurtures humility, but also brings more contentment and peace into your life. Gratitude, as the Stoics teach us, is a gateway to humility. It's a daily reminder that we are not entitled to the things we have, but rather we are stewards of them. And through that reminder, we learn to approach life with greater appreciation, perspective, and grace. As Seneca said, nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart. Let's all strive to live with that honor, embracing gratitude as a path to humility and a richer, more meaningful life. How often do you think about where you fit into the bigger picture, not just in your family, your community, or your workplace, but in the context of the vast, ever-changing universe? It's a humbling thought, isn't it? One that shifts our focus away from the narrow concerns of daily life and encourages us to see ourselves as part of something infinitely larger. This idea of interconnectedness, of belonging to a greater whole, is a central theme in Stoic philosophy, and it's a powerful practice for cultivating humility. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often wrote about this in his meditations. He urged himself, and by extension us, to step back and consider our place within the grand expanse of existence. One of his reflections reads, "You have embarked, you have made the voyage, you have come to shore. Get out. If another life is granted to you, take it as a bonus. If not, depart as you would release yourself from life, doing your duty." In another passage, he reminds us, "You are a soul carrying a corpse." What he's guiding us toward is a profound perspective shift, to see ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as threads in a vast tapestry that stretches beyond our immediate understanding. This might sound abstract, but the message is deeply practical. By stepping back and viewing yourself as part of something larger, the human family, the natural world, or the cosmos itself, you begin to see the smallness of your ego and the insignificance of petty worries that often consume us. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed by something, a disagreement, a missed opportunity, or even a critical comment. In the moment, these things can feel monumental, as though they define everything about who we are. But zoom out for a moment. Imagine yourself standing on this planet, a tiny dot in an unfathomably vast galaxy. Suddenly, those problems begin to shrink. They're still real and they still matter, but they are no longer the overwhelming forces we let them become. This perspective isn't about diminishing yourself or your life's value. Instead, it's about placing things in context. The Stoics believed that recognizing our place within the larger whole frees us from the grip of arrogance and self-importance. It humbles us, showing us that our actions, while important, are just one piece of a much larger puzzle. And in that humility, there's a quiet strength, a sense of peace that comes from knowing that, while we may not control the whole picture, we still contribute to something greater. Let's take a simple but powerful example, nature. When you stand at the edge of the ocean, hike through a forest, or look up at the stars on a clear night, there's a unique mix of awe and humility that washes over you. You can feel how small you are, yet at the same time you sense that you are part of this immense, interconnected system. The Stoics believed that this wasn't just a feeling, it was a fact of existence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "All things are woven together and the common bond is sacred. For there is one universe made up of all things, and one God who pervades all things, and one truth." By reflecting on this unity, we ground ourselves in the reality that our lives, while brief and limited, are intricately connected to a much larger whole. This perspective also encourages us to live more meaningfully. If we see ourselves as part of a broader community or universe, it naturally follows that we should act in ways that serve not just ourselves but others as well. Whether that's through kindness, cooperation, or simply doing our part to contribute positively to the world around us, the Stoic understanding of interconnectedness reminds us that our actions ripple far beyond what we can see. So, how can we adopt this broader perspective in our daily lives? Practice stepping back, especially when something feels overwhelming. Remind yourself of the bigger picture, whether by taking a quiet moment in nature, reflecting on the incredible scale of the cosmos, or simply thinking about how your actions affect the people around you. As we embrace this interconnected view, we soften the grip of our ego and anchor ourselves in the humility that comes from understanding we're part of something far greater than ourselves. What could be more freeing than that? Do your actions align with your values, or are they driven by recognition? It's an important question, and one that can reveal a lot about our motivations. In today's world, where achievements are often measured by likes, shares, and public acknowledgement, it's easy to fall into the trap of doing good things simply to be noticed. But the Stoics offer us a different path, one rooted in serving others without seeking recognition, and in doing so, cultivating a deeper sense of humility. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, believed that the true measure of virtue is not in the applause it receives, but in the quiet impact it makes. He wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." This idea reminds us that acts of service don't need to be grand or public to be meaningful. In fact, it's often the unseen, unacknowledged gestures of kindness that have the most profound effects both on the receiver and on ourselves. Let's break this down into practical terms. Imagine you're at a busy grocery store. You see someone struggling to carry their bags to their car. You could help them, but in that moment, ask yourself, why would I do this? If the answer is, because others might see me and think I'm a good person, then your act of service is tied to your ego. But if the answer is, because it's the right thing to do and I expect nothing in return, now you're practicing Stoic humility. Helping someone in need without the need for validation reinforces the idea that service in its purest form is not about the giver, it's about the act itself. Small, selfless acts like these can temper our sense of self-importance. They remind us that while we're all individuals with our own goals and desires, we're also deeply connected, as we talked about earlier. Every act of kindness has the potential to ripple outward, creating a positive impact that extends far beyond what we might see or know. And when we choose to serve others quietly, without fanfare, we reaffirm that the value of our actions doesn't depend on external validation. It depends on our intention. But what about larger, ongoing commitments to service, volunteering for a cause you care about, mentoring someone who may benefit from your experience, or even offering your time to support a community project? All of these are meaningful ways to align your actions with your values. Seneca believed that service to others wasn't a burden but a duty, and one that brings its own quiet reward. He wrote, "No one can live happily who has regard for himself alone and transforms everything into a question of his own utility. You must live for your neighbor if you would live for yourself." In other words, serving others isn't just about helping them, it's also a way to nurture your own well-being, to remind yourself of your place within the larger human family. Of course, serving without recognition isn't always easy. The ego naturally craves acknowledgement, and when our efforts go unnoticed, it can feel disheartening. But this is where Stoicism invites us to shift our focus. Instead of attaching your sense of fulfillment to how others respond to your actions, anchor it in the knowledge that you acted with integrity. When you hold yourself accountable to your own values, the need for external praise begins to fade. So, as you move through your day, consider this. How can you practice small acts of service without expecting anything in return? Maybe it's as simple as holding the door for someone, offering a genuine compliment, or helping a colleague complete a task. These moments, though small, are significant. They're opportunities to not only make someone else's day better, but also to strengthen your own character. When we act in service to others, guided by Stoic principles, we gain something far more valuable than recognition. We cultivate humility. We remind ourselves that life isn't solely about our ambitions or achievements. It's about connection, contribution, and living in alignment with our deeper values. And in that, we find a kind of fulfillment that no applause could ever replace. As we reflect on serving others without seeking recognition, let's carry this practice into the next phase of our journey, exploring how Stoicism helps us let go of the fear of judgment and embrace the freedom of living authentically. Have you ever found yourself riding high on a wave of praise, only to feel crushed by a single piece of harsh criticism? Maybe a coworker complimented your presentation, leaving you beaming for the rest of the day until someone else pointed out a flaw you'd overlooked, and suddenly that sense of accomplishment vanished. It's a common experience. We're social creatures, and part of us is naturally wired to seek approval and avoid disapproval. But if we base our sense of worth solely on what others think, we hand over control of our emotions to forces outside of ourselves. The Stoics recognized this vulnerability and offered a powerful antidote: detachment from external opinions. Epictetus taught that the key to lasting peace isn't found in the fleeting applause of others or in avoiding their criticism, but in focusing on something far more stable: your own values and actions. He said, if you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your integrity. Be satisfied instead to live with your own approval. In other words, external validation is like a mirage. It might feel rewarding in the moment, but it can never provide the lasting fulfillment that comes from knowing you've acted according to your principles. Let's break this down. Imagine you've worked tirelessly on a project. When it's finally completed, you share it with others, hoping they'll recognize your effort. If they do, and you're flooded with compliments, it feels incredible. But this reliance on praise can be a slippery slope. Over time, it can turn into a dependency where you begin to gauge your worth based on the reactions of others. And what happens when the praise stops, or worse, when criticism creeps in? Suddenly, that same project that once filled you with pride now feels riddled with flaws. This cycle, chasing praise and avoiding criticism, leaves you constantly at the mercy of other people's opinions. Epictetus reminds us that this need for external approval isn't just exhausting, it's unnecessary. Instead of looking outward, he urges us to look inward. Ask yourself, did I do my best? Did I act with honesty, effort, and integrity? If the answer is yes, then that's enough. The opinions of others, whether positive or negative, can then be seen for what they truly are: temporary and ultimately irrelevant to your self-worth. This detachment doesn't mean you ignore feedback or become indifferent to others entirely. The Stoics weren't advocating for arrogance or isolation. On the contrary, they valued learning from constructive criticism and building meaningful connections. But they also believed in maintaining a clear boundary. Other people's opinions are beyond your control. What lies within your control is how you respond to them. Praise might come your way and criticism might follow, but neither should define your sense of self. To make this idea more practical, let's consider an example. Picture an artist who creates a piece of work. When it's exhibited, some people praise it as brilliant, while others dismiss it as uninspired. If the artist's sense of achievement rests on external opinions, their confidence will rise and fall depending on the crowd's reaction. But if the artist instead focuses on their own process, on the care and effort they put into their creation, they find stability. The opinions of others can be appreciated or considered, but they don't have the power to shake their foundation. You can apply the same principle in your daily life. Maybe you worked hard on a proposal at work or prepared a heartfelt gesture for a loved one. Whether these efforts are praised or criticized, take a moment to reflect inward. Did you approach the task with sincerity and effort? Did you act in alignment with your values? If so, take pride in that, regardless of the external response. Detachment from praise and criticism doesn't mean you become a cold, unfeeling person. It means you free yourself from the exhausting roller coaster of external validation. You begin to live not for the approval of others, but for the deep, unshakable sense of integrity that comes from knowing you've stayed true to yourself. And in that space, as the Stoics teach, humility naturally arises. You're no longer driven by the need to be seen as great or the fear of being judged. Instead, you're grounded in something far more profound, your own core values. As we wrap up this idea, reflect on this. Are you letting external opinions define your sense of worth? Or are you choosing to act in a way that earns respect from the person who matters most to you? Humility is not an innate trait but a daily practice, a choice we make through small, consistent actions. The Stoics understood that cultivating humility isn't something achieved overnight. It's a lifelong endeavor shaped by the habits we build and the mindset we carry into each day. Fortunately, they left us with practical tools to develop this virtue, tools that are just as relevant today as they were centuries ago. One of the most accessible and effective practices is journaling. Marcus Aurelius himself kept a journal, not as a display of wisdom but as a private space to reflect, question, and grow. Take a few minutes at the end of each day to write down your thoughts. What went well? Where did you fall short? Did pride cloud your decisions or prevent you from fully listening to others? This isn't about self-criticism, it's about self-awareness. By acknowledging your flaws and where you can improve, you take the first step toward humility, recognizing that you are a work in progress. Over time, this habit helps you approach life with less judgment and more curiosity, aligning perfectly with the Stoic belief that self-examination is the foundation of wisdom. Another daily practice is mindfulness, the art of being fully present in the moment. In our fast-paced, often chaotic lives, it's easy to get lost in our own thoughts, ambitions, or frustrations. But mindfulness invites us to pause, observe, and let go of the ego-driven narratives that can distort our perspective. The next time you feel the urge to react defensively or prove yourself, take a deep breath. Ask yourself, is this my pride talking? Does this response align with my values, or am I acting out of a need to protect my ego? Mindfulness creates a small but powerful space between stimulus and response, allowing humility to guide your actions instead of pride. Perspective taking is another powerful tool to nurture humility. The Stoics often reflected on their place within the broader universe, reminding themselves of the interconnectedness of all things. One way to practice this is to actively put yourself in someone else's shoes. The next time you find yourself in conflict, instead of focusing on proving your point, try to understand the other person's perspective. What might they be feeling? What experiences could be shaping their views? This shift in focus isn't about dismissing your own needs. It's about broadening your understanding and recognizing that your perspective is just one of many. When you approach life with this mindset, you not only deepen your empathy but also quiet the ego's need to always be right. Gratitude is another simple yet profound daily practice that aligns beautifully with Stoic teachings. The Stoics believed in appreciating what we have rather than constantly striving for more. Each day, take a moment to reflect on 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big: a kind word from a friend, a meal you enjoyed, or even the fact that you woke up healthy. Gratitude shifts your focus away from entitlement and toward appreciation, reminding you that much of what you have is not solely your doing but a result of circumstances, luck, or the contributions of others. This practice naturally fosters humility by tempering the ego and helping you see life's gifts with clearer eyes. Finally, embrace moments of discomfort. Whether it's admitting when you're wrong, asking for help, or stepping back to let someone else shine, these acts challenge the ego but strengthen your character. Stoicism teaches us that humility grows when we face these moments not as setbacks but as opportunities for growth. The next time pride urges you to cling to being right or self-sufficient, consider what humility would do instead. You might discover that letting go of pride not only improves your relationships but also brings a surprising sense of freedom. These small, intentional habits, journaling, mindfulness, perspective-taking, gratitude, and embracing discomfort, are simple yet transformative. By weaving them into your daily routine, you cultivate humility not as a distant ideal but as an active practice. Each day becomes a chance to align more closely with the Stoic virtues, to let go of ego, and to live with greater clarity, connection, and purpose. As the Stoics remind us, humility isn't about thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking of yourself less, and in doing so, discovering the strength and wisdom that come from serving something greater than your own pride. As we bring this journey through Stoicism and humility to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've explored together. Humility, as the Stoics remind us, isn't about diminishing yourself or denying your worth. Instead, it's about cultivating the self-awareness to recognize your strengths and limitations, the gratitude to appreciate what you've been given, and the detachment needed to free yourself from the grip of ego. It's the quiet confidence that comes not from others' approval, but from living in alignment with your values. We've uncovered how humility helps us navigate challenges with grace by focusing on what's within our control and letting go of what isn't. Through practices like gratitude, perspective-taking, and self-reflection, we can embrace life's ups and downs without letting pride inflate our victories or criticism deflate our spirit. By grounding ourselves in humility, we make room for growth, deeper connections, and a more meaningful way of living. So how can you carry these ideas forward in your own life? Maybe it's by starting a simple journaling habit, taking a few minutes each day to reflect on where you acted with integrity and where you could have done better. Maybe it's by consciously practicing gratitude, pausing to appreciate life's small joys and the people who contribute to your journey. Or perhaps it's as simple as reminding yourself to listen more fully, to approach every interaction with the openness to learn. These aren't dramatic shifts, but small, intentional steps that can lead to profound change over time. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, do every act of your life as though it were the very last act of your life. It's a powerful call to live with purpose, authenticity, and humility. What would change in your life if you applied this mindset each day? Would you let go of petty frustrations, approach others with more kindness, or perhaps be a little gentler with yourself? Take a moment to think about how you can weave this principle into your own actions. And as we conclude, I'd love to hear from you. How do the teachings of Stoicism resonate with you? Are there moments in your life where practicing humility has made a difference? Or is there a specific idea from today's discussion that you'd like to explore further? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and learn from one another. After all, sharing and listening are acts of humility themselves. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Stoic wisdom. Remember, humility isn't a finish line to cross, it's a way to approach the world one thoughtful step at a time. Stay grounded, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.